Yes! Welcome back to another Music Maker guitar video. This is McCarty Monday, so this is my Paul Reed Smith McCarty that I've got with me, my trusty PRS as always, on a Monday, as we do, you know. Anyways, if you could go ahead, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment for things that you want to hear after today's video. I would be so appreciative. Actually, I wanted to take today and answer a really great comment that I got on my how to play traditional style reggae video. So I will link that in the description. I'll also leave a card for it somewhere up over here so that you guys can all see that. And also, if you want more in-depth information on how to do all of this stuff, I have much longer, more detailed videos on my website, musicmakerlessons.com. Link to that also is in the description. Musicmakerlessons.com. Anyways, so go there if you need some more. But Demox, I hope I'm saying your name right, left a really great comment, a really great question, and it sounded like he wanted to know a little bit about like my amp sound and my sound from that, preference between guitars, basically just like the overall, I guess like what am I using, why am I using it, etc. And then he wanted to know about some guitar fills. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, just preface this real quick. The guitar fill stuff, I have some like videos that I've done about triads and different various scales, modes, and stuff. I would go check all of those out a little bit because that'll give you a good precursor on how to do some of this stuff. I would also, again, go to that website, like I said. There's actually a free download you can get off of there. It's just a packet that's like just full of like my scale forms and chord forms and what I find to be just a really helpful organization. It's nothing fancy. I'm not like Scott's Bass Lessons and gonna give you a huge packet like full of like pretty stuff. This is all just stuff that I wrote out over the years because I found it was useful to know it. So it's all just for now written by hand. Maybe one day I'll learn how to like join the year 2020 with the rest of us and get this stuff into like a prettier format. But for now, I find this very effective. So you know, it's no frills. It's just written out and scanned in. But it is, I think, the most effective stuff to practice to get you on point for like a lot of this soloing stuff like lead guitar and stuff like that. So I would just go there, check it out, get the packet, and you know, if nothing else, you have the resource. You know what I mean? If you want to go more in depth, there's a lot of information there on how to do it. Let's talk the preference between guitars and the guitar sound, just real quick. Now, I find that the preference for guitar, it doesn't matter. I have my PRS McCarty with me here today because it's McCarty Monday and because I love this guitar so much. But that said, the video that I'm playing that is Yolanda here, which is my black Stratocaster, which I built. It's just Stratocaster pickups on that. It looks like it's kind of fancy, but there's a Fishman triple play that's installed, which is not being used at all. So you can kind of factor the MIDI pickup out because that's just not in there. And honestly, the only thing that I use that for these days is for notation. It's just really easy to play in stuff and write it out in pretty looking music from that. So I use that sometimes. But the other thing that people think is real fancy about it are the Lindy Fralin pickups on there, which I assure you, those are just Stratocaster pickups. And I talked to Lindy about that. The only thing that's maybe a little bit special about those is that they're noiseless. And as most of us know, single coil pickups make a hum. In fact, this guitar even has single coils on them. You can hear when I turn that on. Single coils on, I get a hum. Humbuckers on, no hum. So it's just a noiseless pickup guitar. But other than that, it's just a straight Stratocaster sound, which is pretty standard. And I play a Squier Telly on a lot of days too, just because I really like the Squier series of guitars. They play good right out of the box, so they don't really need a lot. So that said, like if you're picking a guitar, say for a recording or for a band, I think main thing to check out is like which pickup sound do you like? Do you like a single coil like a Stratocaster sound, or do you like a single coil like a Telecaster sound? Do you like lipstick pickups? Do you like humbuckers? Do you like P90s? I think it's just important to pick what you like to start with. And then from there, it's all about your amp and your settings, and or if you're using a DAW, your internal amp. Now, for most things that I do, I just use these amps direct to the camera. My camera mic is pretty awesome. I use a Zoom Q2N, which is kind of a musician's camera, but I've had the same results with just a phone camera, so you really don't need anything fancy. You just need to make sure that your gear is set up kind of correctly. So, what is correctly? Let's talk about that. For that video, I was just using the Boss Katana amp, and for most of my other videos, I'm using these two amps, the Boss and this Fender Blues Junior Tweed, in stereo. So I'm using them both, but essentially I'm using the same kind of principle. This is the principle. Basically, when an engineer, whether it's for a live show or for a studio recording, mixes a guitar, the first thing they do is slap an EQ on there and they roll off all of the bass. So I figure, why not save them a step? I'm gonna roll down my bass. So on these amps, I have my gain is like 5 or 6 on the clean amp setting, and then I also have volume is like up to 8, bass down to 2, middle 3 to 4, treble up to like 8 or 9. And the reason I do that is because that's how the engineer is going to mix it anyway. So why not just give them a cleaner, like closer to what they want sound in the first place? That's number one. The second thing is this. When you play with a band, there's other frequencies that actually argue with our bass frequency when we turn it on. So like if you're playing with a keyboard player, for instance, or singers, or horn section, or hey, other guitar players, bass players, any of those people might be eating up bass frequencies. So I think it's healthy to just get our bass frequencies out of their way, and that'll make the whole thing sound stronger. I think a big thing that makes a band sound good and big sounding is just a diversity of sounds. So like trying to dial in more bass so that our guitar sounds bassier in a band setting doesn't really do anything for the band. It just kind of makes you happier that you're not so twangy. But what's the real talk of this is that the band needs your twanginess, because that's the characteristic of this instrument that's like that people love, you know. So we should all just embrace that instead of trying to make it sound like something else. So that's where the amp sound comes from. It's just a hot amp. Now, when I use stereo amps, I turn both the amps down a little bit because they're working in conjunction with each other to make it louder. So I have a slightly lower setting when I'm using stereo, but it's really a hot signal. So that's where the tone comes from. And then I think there's a big difference now too. So when the amps are set that hot, you can actually just turn your volume on your guitar down to, like, I have on this guitar like 3.5 to 4. Notice a big difference. If I turn this up to 10, and I'm just going to use this, I have a volume pedal here, but same thing. That's like too electric. It sounds like too much of the pickup coming through. I prefer to keep this down, get a slightly weaker signal, and maybe hear some more of the wood of the guitar. You know what I mean? Turn up more if I want. And then something else that I kind of work on is just playing at the correct volumes. You know what I mean? Like making sure that this is dialed in perfectly so that I can play not loudly, but just like with my regular picking volume and not be too out front in front of the band until it's like my turn to solo or something. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big part of where my sound comes from. When I play solo, I try and use that same concept. So like I use a loop machine, so I use diversity of sound. Keeping it kind of on the topic of reggae, that chuck, I always use like my front pickup. Because I want it to cut through. I want it to be like really spanky sounding, you know. But like for like a bass line, I'll probably use this neck pickup. I like a little bit of a throatier, like deeper, muddier. Like just a little smoother and tighter, and if I can marry those, like the skank sound and then that together, like within the loop machine, again, it's like a greater diversity of tone. It gives you a wider spread. It gives you a better mix. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of about that for my sound, and for a lot of my favorite guitar players' sounds, they do a lot of the same thing. They're just really working every kind of dynamic that they can out of the instrument. It's not so much about anything else other than just working that out. And yes, it's the amp too, but I think really it's like a kind of a set it and forget it situation. So yeah, for fills, basically that information that I use for traditional style stuff comes from triads. So like on the video that I was doing before, I was doing A minor, D minor. So what I try to do is like I find every version of that. So you can do like A minor, D minor, then A minor, D minor, and then A minor, D minor. And then you can do that on different strings. Right? Right? Like finding all the different places where that can work is what informs me on like a lot of my melodic composition. And I might not practice them all like that. I might do like practice like going between the two triads so that you can get this other stuff. There's an exercise that I do with it. Like if my two chords are A minor, D minor, I try and fill up an entire measure of A minor and an entire measure of D minor, just going up and down the triad. So like. right? And there's some like scale notes that you can kind of connect in there, but I think the main like material comes from that. And same thing from what I was doing here. I was doing C major. So if you can like practice the same thing. Right? Like you're just practicing playing through the chord, but what that does for you is it makes you really like study where are the notes of the chord on the guitar, and that way when I play with this track, really decide where I want to go. So I think a lot of like what I do, it comes from just the notes of the chords. And sometimes you can play like the notes of the second chord on top of the notes of the first chord. Like I was kind of doing that when I was doing. Right, like that is just, I'm playing a C and a B flat and a C and a B flat. And they're both over both chords. You know what I mean? So like this, that happened over this, and then that happened over this, right? And then happened over this, and then happened over this. So it really can be like either of them happen, because they happen both in the same context of the same music and together back to back. You can juxtapose one on top of the other, and like there's really not a lot in terms of like rules of what you have to do or what you're not allowed to do. It's really just a matter of what are the chord tones and what do you like, you know? It's and if you're honest about that, I think that's where the best sounding music comes from. It doesn't really come from just like spitting them out as an exercise. You have to decide that you like something, and then you have to commit to that and go like, this note is awesome, I'm going to start right on that note. You know, you have to like really commit to that part of it to make it good. Which is weird because it's almost like it gives us as people a lot of power over music and vibration, because it's like if we mean to do it, then it's going to sound better than like if it just happened by accident. But it's amazing how it works that way. So I would encourage you, go practice that stuff, you know. Just practice like techniques like triads and scales and things like that. A lot of people think they'll lose their soul if they learn that stuff. No, you won't. It's not about that. I don't know a single person that's lost their soul from learning the scale. If anything, it's made everybody who has felt like that just feel like, oh wow, I should have probably done this sooner, and then I would be that much better at it. So I would encourage anybody who's hesitant, just go straight over there. I'm going to say it again, plug my website one more time. Go to my website. Just get this packet of stuff, and you'll just have the information. And just practicing it a little bit at a time. I'll say the same thing I've said before. Don't expect that it'll all just kind of seep into your brain from getting it, but if you just practice it a little bit at a time and you're honest with yourself, like did I learn something new today, and did I take whatever I learned and like use it to play something a little bit better today than what I could yesterday? And that could be like, if you're still in the beginning stages of this, that could be really frustrating, because like better than yesterday might not be that good in your opinion. But I think just like maybe being able to measure that I can play it, instead of 60 BPM, I can play it at 62 BPM today. That's an improvement, you know? Oh, my tone is just a little clearer today. That's an improvement. Oh, some of my notes are just a little bit less buzzy than they were yesterday. That's an improvement, you know? Like, you have to take those, you have to take your accomplishments into account as you're doing this stuff. Otherwise, you can really easily get lost in it, and it can very, very easily get frustrating. So, just be honest. I think that's the biggest thing is just be honest. It doesn't have to be a thing where you're perfect at this. Even if your goal is to get perfect at it, it just takes work. So as long as you're honest with yourself on doing that work, I have faith that you will get there. But just take the time and do that. And I'll see you out there on my website. Go get that packet, and let's continue this conversation. Leave me a comment. Leave me a question. You can even email me directly on the website. So go do that if you want. But I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to keep this going between all of us, between the guitar community as much as we can, because it's a place where I love to be. So hopefully that helps. Much love. Thank you guys all for the inspiration on doing this. I'm going to go ahead and play myself out, but have a great rest of your Monday, and I'll see you tomorrow for Telly Tuesday.